Welcome to the reading of Logan Roy's Last Will and Testaments here on the Intercut podcast channel's weekly guide to the inner workings of the Roy family. I'm Zachary Shevich, and joining me, we're halfway in on a Greek island together. It's Arturo Zurita.
I'm glad to be here. I looked at the list to make sure I made it, and luckily mine was underlined, not crossed through.
Yeah, we can only hope, I guess, right? Um, by the way, that Greek island. Are you think it's more of like a Mykonos party island situation, or is Carl looking for more of a laid back place on the coast? Like what kind of Greek island do you picture Carl buying for him and his
He's
brother in
going to
law?
whatever Greek village he's going to. I think that's what Carl's going to end up to. He isn't going to no island. He's going to a little, he's going to the Greek island restaurant, probably after all is said and done. I don't have my hopes up for Carl.
Yeah, a lot of people in shifting situations. There's a scramble in the wake of the last episode of Succession, a monumental episode of Succession 403. Of course, the episode in which we got the end of the Logan Roy saga on Succession, and now it's on the siblings, who are all dealing with various forms of grief after their fathers died. Succession every day this season has been one day following the next one. So this is picking up in the immediate aftermath of that last episode. Kendall looking the worst for wear out of them all. Roman saying he's pre-grieved. Kendall's got a grief guy. He's got a good grief guy. That was, I think, one of my favorite quotes early on in this episode. But the focus of this episode is really that discovery of a piece of paper that hinged on that has that fateful underlined or crossed out bit that you mentioned. Should we jump straight to that moment? Because I feel like
Let's do it.
that's sort of the big thing happening on this week's Succession. Are you team crossed out or underlined? Because they did, whoever in production design or props designed that did a really good job giving you that kind of 50-50.
Yeah, you know there were drafts. They're going like that, and then they had somebody to go like that. They were trying so many ones.
How
Psychologically,
many
you
takes
know
do you think it would take you to get the perfect crossed
to
out slash
perfectly get it
underline?
like that. Yeah, so I'm of two
Yeah.
minds, right? This and there was another image of a magazine. Those were probably the two big spoiler-esque things that were out there in terms of frames.
Hmm.
I'm split between this because at first I want to say no, it's not. At one point he put him on there, and then as they said, well afterwards, in pencil pen, he started doing a lot of different things. So they know
Hmm.
that at a certain point he did want him, and so many years have passed, well, 4 years of succession, and the penciling came in to kind of add alternate notes. So I believe there's no other reason to go back and underline something because that makes absolutely no sense. It would be going
Yeah.
back to cut something out. And I part of me, the only reason I don't want to believe it is because when you cross something out, I would have started with that K right down the middle. Like my crossouts,
Right.
yeah, the underline would have been at the end, not at the beginning.
The
But it
thing
gets too
that we have
close.
to all remember here is that this is a man who was getting up there in age. He's not in the best
You couldn't see
health,
the
and
K?
I just think senior citizens' hands aren't always the most steady, and you can't necessarily rely on them
Highlighters.
to land the pencil in the right. I mean, can you cross out with a highlight? That's all. That would have
You
solved the
highlight,
situation, maybe.
that would have solved it.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm like you. I'm struggling a little bit with the logic of going back just to underline something. Like, why do that? But then again, like if you're going to cross it out, why are you just crossing out the name, not just that whole little section there?
What would have really done it is because I think you and I are the same accord that we think that the next up was clearly going to be Roman. He had Shiv had her chance, right?
Hmm.
Kendall had his chance multiple times. They both lost it. We saw them lose it. Roman never really went up to bat. And in the talks for this scene, there are several moments where you look at Roman kind of react to it when they're talking about like, yeah, he was a man of many different things, and Roman kind of goes like, yeah, kind of shifted a lot, as if almost he knew that he was on the horizon, just like Carrie thought she was on the horizon, just like a lot of people thought they were on the horizon to be on the good graces. So I do think that at one point he put it in print. I want it to be my second first eldest. But the crossing out, I don't. I see it as it definitely being a crossing out because I see no other reason to go back to underline something. Like I feel like
Mm-hmm.
Logan is a circler. He would have circled an emphasis, not an
It's
underline.
all good points. Very good points. Uh, but yeah, that starts sort of the first little power scramble between the siblings because Kendall takes that underline very seriously. Shiv very quickly gets in one of her signature shivs, saying that she thinks it's a cross out. Just the delivery that Jeremy Strong has on that shiv, like he's so immediately betrayed by her
He's
in that
right.
moment.
He's right. Think about it. It's coming
Hmm.
down to either keeping it in the family, keeping Roy Coe in the family, or as he says, maybe
Hmm.
he's like, or do you want to go give it to the old guards or whatever he calls them. He knows that it's gonna come down between either sticking it at home or it going away. So if you have the chance to not gamble it, I don't know. I thought it was an obvious decision um, to
Yeah,
go a specific route.
I feel like Kendall is the one who most quickly saw the big picture both last week and this week in that he's the one who snaps into business mode most quickly from the three of them. And yeah, like if you want to take him at his word, then this is a great opportunity for them to seize control of the company in order to guide it into the sale that they all want so that they can go into their next venture together. But they come from a father who has taught them nothing but betrayal and
Yeah.
self-interest, serving your self-interest. So I see the anxiety amongst them, and Roman too. Like doesn't like just give it to Kendall. Tom gets into his ear a little bit beforehand, but do you think that that was Tom's influence, or Roman couldn't help himself but try and angle for the co-CEO slot?
I I think he deserves to be there. I definitely think it should have been two of them in terms
Hmm.
of running it like a family. Obviously, that builds a different dynamic for Shiv, who's kind of really left on the sidelines.
Right.
Tom was goofy the whole episode, though. I thought poor Tom came off like a lapdog, dude. He was just going to every single like there is a montage, there is an intercut, someone just said it as well, a supercut that you can make of this man just saying at your service. Come on now.
Ready to
It was a
serve.
really low blow for Tom this episode.
Yeah, Tom probably more than anybody, I feel like was just sort of looking
Scrambling?
desperately for somebody to become his protector or
Yeah.
give him any kind of like okay. You know, he was just feeling it out, and even like trying in that little huddle rest of the with the rest of the suits, just
Hmm.
like seeing who could potentially be CEO. Carl comes in devastatingly. You're a clumsy interloper and no one trusts you. The only guy pulling for you is dead. And now you're just married to the ex boss's daughter and she doesn't even like you. And you are fair and squarely fucked. Carl
That's
coming
what
in
they
with the
would
heaters
say.
this episode.
And
That's what
Carl
they
said,
would say.
reportedly, allegedly, that's what they would say.
Just giving voice to it.
Yeah, just want to let you know.
Um, that out of that huddle of Frank, Carl, Jerry, Carolina, and Tom, do you think anybody comes out looking the best? Is anybody, in the prime slot for them, or
You know, I told you last week that Carolina was clearly coming up to bat for Jerry, and she does so
mm-hmm.
immediately when it comes to like picking who the tribute's going to be. She's like, "Yo, I'm Jerry all the way in." When it comes between Frank and Carl, I was surprised that Frank kind of got on the knee to uphold Carl out of all things. I kind of really liked how Frank has been moving recently. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Between Carl and Jerry, obviously I'm going Jerry, but between the four, Carolina's been the most consistent. Jerry's been the one who I rooted for, but there is a moment just to get a little ahead when she comes up to bat to suggest herself and they shut her down so fast. Roman says something to her, and the way she just buckled up, I was like, you can't be CEO. Mind you, I don't think anyone on the show, other than the man himself, rest in peace, really can run it. But I do love how
Right.
she kept bringing up, I did have that interim. I have ushered us
Mm-hmm.
into a new
It was a
a new
successful
way,
stint.
and I always forget about that. But yeah, Jerry's my favorite, but um, none, to be honest with you. But shout out Carl. Carl and Frank had
Yeah.
one of my favorite exchanges this sequence about, I'm just saying it in a humorous tone. Is exactly how he said it. He said, I'm kidding. Of course. Yeah, just speculating in a comic mode in a humorous vein. Like that to me has been one of the
That whole
best.
scene was
Uh,
great.
yeah, going back and forth between them, I thought that was fantastic. You know, because you could just accidentally flush it down the toilet.
That was a really funny scene. We shouted out Peter Friedman last week, who was excellent last week. Also really excellent this week. He had another scene where he got to be, pseudo dad to Kendall and give him a little bit of guidance. But both he and David Raish, I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name, who plays Carl, are so funny on this week's Succession.
Also, when Greg comes in to offer himself, and Frank just his mouth has never been that wide. He just straight laughed at him, but he liked the attempt
But his name's on the paper
with a question mark.
with the question mark. Oh man. So yeah, what did you make of the whole negotiation between the siblings and them deciding that it's cleaner if they leave Shiv out? We've seen them at least for now kind of on the same page. They came together in a nice way for their father's funeral, and Kendall and Roman promising to not, cut Shiv out. That when they start up their new company, they'll be equal. Do you take them at their word, or are you worried that Shiv might be the one who kind of rocks the boat first? Because she definitely seems not so happy with the arrangement.
Yeah, I think this is the best case scenario for her. She's already attempted
Hmm.
it. These two are getting ushered in by everybody, and they have enough people behind them. It's going to make a lot more sense. They are also the best case scenario for her because I don't see them pushing her to the side. Do you? I feel like
No, I
Roman's
mean,
been harder.
yeah,
Kendall maybe, but
Roman seems to not want to like disrupt the family. He even
yeah,
with his dad, he was never really trying to undermine his dad.
for sure. So
Kendall
she's not the
seems
forefront, but
Yeah. Kendall seems like he's turned over a new leaf, although like maybe by the end of this episode, not so
some
much.
yeah,
And I guess we could
exactly.
we could talk about that then, but like before that final moment, it really does kind of I at least took Kendall at his word. He is just trying to do the right thing, but Kendall does have a good way of like sounding convincing in those moments
That's
and
what
and
I'm
being
saying.
full of shit too.
The episode also starts with her at the doctor, possibly being
Right. Should
pregnant.
we
So if she is, wouldn't like I could see them or the company in general using that as a like, oh no, you kind of have to step down as a way to kind of ease her away, which leads me to what you said. I don't think they may cause the problem with her. I think she may cause the rift instead. A rift that shouldn't be there, and all she has to do is just be patient, and I think it may come in. I've always said she is the closest to her father, just sadly not in business, in the stubbornness. And I think that
Mhm.
that may come back into play.
Yeah, I mean, last week we speculated maybe Carrie would end up pregnant, but the pregnancy ended up with Shiv's
May I?
character right at the beginning
May
of the
I?
episode, like before the intro. Yeah, go ahead.
You had mentioned something that Caitlin had said last week, right? So, in that,
Yeah,
I want to take this big detour that goes all the way before season 3. It begins with this. I don't know if you saw last week. If you boot that up right under where you have noted bottle episode, right underneath, I linked up where they had a secret code for Logan's death, LD, but it wasn't
yeah.
Logan's death. It was Larry David.
Larry
So
David.
in that, for years they've been holding this secret because if you scroll down, they had planned this before season 3. They had already told Logan, 1, you're going to die in an early episode 2 seasons from now. 2, you will still be paid for all the episodes like you told me. And 3,
Yeah,
they brought him in to shoot dummy scenes. So he is
yeah,
there for any future scenes. They just filmed stuff just because, so it wouldn't be spoiled. But that
yeah.
means
They
they
did
told
a
him everything.
great job keeping that.
They did. I commend them for that. That's really good behind the scenes work. But that means that they told him everything in the story before season 3 and nobody else. So when I'm listening to interviews this past weekend and I find an old one, but I'm like, let me just listen to it. Maybe it's going to hit different. Yo, that man damn near spoiled all of season 4 before 3 came out. He started talking about a seed that he may have before any of us even knew about Carrie, bro. It gets followed up by Roman, what's his name,
Uh,
saying, "Yeah, you're probably gonna spoil everything by the end of the Zoom call." So I'm gonna leave it there. Carrie's been a little
interesting,
flustered. She
interesting.
comes in dropping things, but I don't know. There may still be a chance there. She just wants to know: has there been something written there that still kind of includes her? That's what everyone was. She was pulling a Tom, just trying to see: does anybody still have it? I'll take a question mark, an exclamation point, or a comma. Just let me know where I've been written.
Let's talk before we get any confirmation on a potential Carrie pregnancy. Let's talk about the potential Shiv pregnancy. It's interesting that Sarah Snook announced she's pregnant as well. So I wonder if there's any kind of like synchronicity in that. Although apparently, according to the official Succession podcast, it's something that they had been discussing with Sarah Snook for a couple of years. So it's not like a last minute adjustment. It seems like, at least. But she's already uh, getting ready for her 20-week scan, the doctor says. So that's several months along, which would, I guess, hint at it being Tom's, or do you feel like there's some, as she's been wont to do, some
I
affair responsible
think
for
it's more
this?
interesting if it's Tom's.
Yeah,
So
considering where
I'm gonna
they're
go
at
Tom's.
as a couple, and
Yeah.
particularly given Tom's situation where he doesn't have a protector, and now suddenly he might have something tying him to Shiv, like you know, as fucked up logic as that is, like it is this
Yeah.
kind of weird lifeline for Tom.
They could be more messed up and say that it is somebody else's, but because the timeline would showcase that she was still married to Tom, they don't want it to come out that she's promiscuous and thus she has to
Mm.
lie about it being Tom's. I mean, there's a dozen
Or she
ways that
even
they could go
lies
with
to
it, but
Tom.
yeah, so we'll see. Never
Yeah.
tells him about the kid. Full pregnancy, no one knows.
Should we talk about Marsha?
I am so glad she's back and she's done shopping from Milan. I actually cheered when she came out on screen. She is one of
well,
my underrated favorites.
she had talks with Logan every day and evening, in-depth discussions every evening with him.
Not logged, right? As Kendall said, what would the phone records say, Hugo? I don't know what the phone records would say to her, but who knows? Maybe it was a pigeon call.
What did you make of the return of Hayam Habas, who was a huge part of the show
Fantastic.
in the beginning, and somebody that we speculated maybe would have like a lot of power by the end, before kind of disappearing for a little while. Uh, but she's got some of the sharpest knives out of
Yeah, she's
anybody on
fantastic.
this cast.
Uh, there is her, Willa, and Carrie. They were cooking up
Mhm.
something really special in their stares, in their little remarks. You have the queen here, someone who married in, did it to the max. You have
Yeah.
Willa talking to her, and she says,
Look at us
"Look how
both.
far we've come. Look at us both" is such a raw line because that's who she aspires to be, which is so sick, right? Not marrying in.
Hmm.
To survive the rich husband you married into, so it's now all yours. What a crazy line from Willa. In
Yeah.
the fourth season, to give her one of the best lines like that was fantastic. And then you get
also
the
just
end of the
given
pendulum.
the way also just given the way that she was so like kind of rude to her back at the Austerlitz episode when they were in the desert. Like, this is Willa kind of persevering through all of that, and it's like, no, now
She's
I'm
married in.
kind of on your level too. I'm part of the
It's
family.
signed. Hey, she dotted that. She knows what it is. It's all family. She doesn't have to worry about Logan anymore. There's no one to upset or to upset your son-in-law. It's all good. In fact, she makes a deal with him, which is one of my favorite scenes. But you have Carrie, who is the opposite end. If she is the queen mother right here, Carrie's coming in fumbling for anything. She has not signed on the dotted line. She doesn't even know if she made a sticky note or on the notepad or anything. I felt bad for her, but at the same time, the moment they took her out the back, I said, "Fuera, bro, get her out of here." Carrie's done. Unless she pulls up with a stick, I think that's the end for Carrie. And I like how Marsha
Yeah.
treated her. That was dope.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's just such a quick shift in their status, because Carrie was literally the next person next to Logan as he died, but nothing written down on paper, it seems. And uh you know uh, he kind of left her out to dry, but I guess that's what happens with those like late in life flings with billionaires. There's
Yeah.
a lot of reporting on what is it, Summer Redstone, the former head of Viacom and Paramount, and all the mistresses that he had close to the end who stole lots of money from him and tried to snatch power of Paramount. Basically, there's a really interesting
Sheesh.
discussion on it on the official Succession podcast. So it's
I
kind of
think they
interesting to
did because
see that,
Paramount
like,
Plus sucks.
it's sort of interesting to see like the potential paths that might have existed for Carrie had she maybe moved a little bit more smartly at the end. How
Well, it
how
definitely wasn't going to be an anchor.
how much of her devastation there do you take as like genuine versus her just acknowledging or realizing that she's lost that status?
What do you mean?
Like, do you think there's any part of her that's just genuinely sad she's not back in the Roy's life, or part of this whole thing, like, just that she's not treated like she was the girlfriend?
Oh well, yeah, it's done for her. Like that money check is gone. The sugar
Well,
daddy's dead.
yeah, you think it's 100% that? Yeah, I mean, like,
Well, yeah. What she never hung out with the kids, right?
yeah,
I don't think
yeah.
she really ran the company. Well, what was her official status?
Assistant slash colleague slash advisor.
Yeah, so she wasn't there for anything else.
Yeah.
Did you think she was there to to provide emotional support?
Not really, but she does seem very distraught in that moment.
I would be too if they put me on a taxi to drop me off at the subway to go back home to my little what you call it, her little condo, her little apartment
Her
back in the
little
city.
apartment.
There you go.
That's my winner for quote of the episode, by the way. Like, it's so devastating. Like, I was a little. It was a little like, can they even say that? That hurt. That is close.
It was good.
Yeah. Any other quotes stood out to you from this episode?
The in humorous vein, in a speculating in a comic mode is I
That
thought
whole
that was
scene
my
is
standout.
excellent.
I replayed that like 3 times. Pre-grieved, which you had mentioned earlier, I thought was
Hmm.
a fantastic one. There's one that happens when they're reading the reviews, which are all of his obituaries. I thought that was funny. The reviews are in, and there's one where they're kind of deciphering everything, and they talk about how good of a guy he was. And Siobhan
Yeah.
goes, "Man, Dad sounds
Dad
amazing.
sounds
I wish
amazing.
I'd met Dad."
I would have liked to have met Dad.
That's a raw line. I like that a lot. Um, Probably some other little moments. Colin having a son was interesting. You know, he comes in with the son and following the dog that comes in as well. But it was having on the piece of paper that Colin gets a watch. That was a nice
Yeah,
touch.
we didn't end up talking about that really devastating shot in last week's episode when they
Mm-hmm.
just show Colin watching the plane, and you see that
The
he's
guard dog.
lost his friend or his job or whatever you want to say. It
Why was he not on the plane? If Colin was
That's a
there,
good
he would have done
question,
the
actually.
compressions
Isn't he
right.
his body man? Yeah, he exactly. Colin would have known what to do. Colin could have saved the day.
Exactly.
That's
Also,
the
it's
lesson of
crazy
the
the
story: is
the
you need
the
your Colin.
thinking in retrospect of if they didn't push their dad to go close this deal, as Shiv was saying, then he would have never gone on the plane. And this idea that the kids hold themselves responsible for having him charter something where he could have been back home and lived another 20 years or so. Oh, I like that. I like that element of it.
Yeah, that guilt that will never go away. Man. Okay, a couple other great quotes. I liked "Where's Carrie?" inside Marsha's trunk, inside an anaconda, inside a sarcophagus. There's also that whole exchange about the paintings, the Gauguins, that no one's seen for tax reasons. Why not just burn them through the insurance? And Carl goes, "Yeah, that would be the dream, financially speaking. Just burning priceless artworks to gain the insurance money off them."
See, that's why I think this episode is so great. You have those little undercut moments where everyone's just going at it. The grief is still there from the previous episode, but you have them on full mode. Who's going to be the successor? Not to mention, that's what it all leads for. I know you still got a couple more, but we'll get to that.
No,
You
I was
finally
gonna.
got the succession.
Well, no, I was gonna say though, like, you kind of dropped this little tidbit in at the end of our weekend must watch.
I
This
said
week
last
was
week.
better than last week.
What were your favorite quotes from last week? Because he
I
died. It was a death episode. That's the thing. It
There's good
shocked us in a
ones.
way that, yes, I acknowledge is great. But this is where they were real. This is like what made the last episode so good. This is that aftermath. This is like the last episode took you to the top. You're like, dang, I can't believe we're this
Mhm.
high. And then this was the come down, and everything that's going to follow, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great episode of Succession. It's kind of more of a bottle episode than we're used to on Succession because they're always going to these lavish places and
Hmm.
globe trotting and going from fancy place to fancy place. And I don't know if Succession has ever like locked us in an apartment for the entire duration of the episode, save for that first like 4 or 5 shots. But it also ends up being the thing that we love most about Succession is when all of these characters are in the same space and have to interact and have to navigate around each other, and all the like just little asides and moments that the different characters get when they break off from one another. So it does feature a lot of what I love about Succession. It's just that I think that last week kind of featured a lot of that too, and also was just the kind of thing that you rarely get on TV. I think where I landed with last week though is that like I think last week was one of the greatest episodes of television of all time, but it's not like necessarily the greatest episode of Succession because it's such an abnormal episode of Succession.
That's what, I don't think any of us disagree. I understand why people love the episode, but I think you brought up
Yeah.
exactly what stands out to me. They pulled something that hasn't happened in television, right? That's why I was
Mhm.
saying a lot of the Game of Thrones episodes, we'll name a lot before we mention those, like, oh my goodness, in the first
Yeah.
season when someone died right
It's
before the finale.
it's almost
You like
easier
the,
to compare it to the Red Wedding or to Ned Stark dying than it is to compare it to this week's episode.
yeah. So to me, what I look for in Succession, oh, it was all in this episode. It was great, all the way
Yeah.
to us getting the answer for what we wanted. See, to me, it's like Logan dying is a big thing, but figuring out who's going to be the successor, I don't know. I think that's kind of bigger, a little bit, a little bit. So yeah, that's why it worked for me. Next week, you were mentioning how every single one is on a daily basis. So do you feel they're going to continue doing that battle episode, including next week, because they'll be with Matson? So are they just going to be in his location? Same thing, probably happening
I
for all
mean,
the
I
other
don't
ones.
know if it'll be as contained as this week is, particularly given like they were on the phone with Matson talking about how they're at this retreat. So, you remember
They were,
that
they were on the phone
episode in
with his guy. He couldn't say hi.
exactly, yeah.
Disrespectful.
You remember that episode in season 2 when they go to some conference and they go like Tom and Greg go on a hike and they're in these different conference rooms and like, I feel like it might be that where it's like we're in one area, but there is kind of more movement and some different settings there. But yeah, I feel like the majority of it is going to be probably in Sweden because I think we are going to get that one a day thing, especially as you were saying, Brian Cox was there and continued to see what they were doing. So I feel like if he said it, that probably is the case for the show.
True. I'm just excited that the group without him have been able to keep up their own. I was a little
I'm
worried
glad
about
that you're
that. That
still
they,
in.
nah, they've been
You were a
right.
little
And look,
skeptical.
we can. Hey, they weren't writing them like this before, bro. We can rewatch all of them. There's hints of that, but the lines they were giving them today, Frank, Carl, I don't know. They were heavy hitters, like they haven't written for them before.
Yeah, definitely. What was I going to ask? Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention while we're talking about the one day at a time thing, I realized something about that because if Succession really is going to be one day per episode and we're getting 10 episodes, in the very first episode of this season, Connor says the election is 10 days out. So I think
I
we're
couldn't tell
getting
if
an
he was like
election.
lying. Okay,
So I think we're
like
getting an
finale.
election night finale.
I mean, if you ever hear any behind the scenes from the showrunners, I wouldn't put it past them. They
Mhm.
can't accept an award without talking about politics, so I could definitely see that being the big climax that they want then.
Yeah, I think that could be pretty exciting. All right, well, there's
Hmm.
one other aspect that we haven't really gotten into yet, and that is Hugo making a bit of mistake, doing a little bit of
I told you,
insider trading.
I told you last week, right? I said he had a little thing that he was leaning on with Ken. I had it wrong. I thought, oh, maybe he knows something and he wants to get close to Ken. Idiot, moron.
Yeah, with the giving a tip to an estranged daughter that he doesn't even really talk to, and the kind of thing that could get him in a whole lot of trouble. So, for those people who maybe didn't follow it, essentially during the whole ordeal of Logan's death being known but not yet coming out, apparently Hugo made a call to Juliet, his daughter, who decided to take that moment to sell off some Waystar Royco stock before
Mm-hmm.
the big dip that we saw on Roman's phone after the death was
Yep.
announced.
This
Kind of
was like on the
illegal.
yacht.
Yeah,
Oh,
kind of can get
pretty
you in a
illegal.
whole lot of trouble.
Hey, that's not a cross out. That's a full circle. Yeah, you getting in trouble.
So
Oh.
yeah, Hugo in a rare move actually asking one of the siblings for some help, and obviously this is a thing he'd go to Logan for if Logan wasn't there, but he considers Kendall top dog, and especially after he becomes co-CEO. But it's not just what Hugo does, but it's how Kendall uses it against him. Because the thing that we haven't talked about is that after the board officially names Roman and Kendall co CEOs, Hugo and Carolina take the two of them into Logan's private office and basically offer them a couple different PR packages. Either we can put out respectful photos of you with your father and honor his legacy, or we leak some news about Connor's birth mother and the way that he's treated y'all, and that maybe he didn't really have his hand on the steering wheel. And while
They were
Roman is
puppeting him, yeah.
disgusted, yeah, and while Roman is disgusted by it, Kendall goes to Hugo later when Hugo's all alone and tells him to take it on freelance. What did you think of this turn from Kendall? And is the son stepping into the legacy of the father here?
To a degree, I think it turns him into a person who would be willing to put his brother, who he's supposed to be running with, to the side. And if he could put the person he's running with to the side, then I can definitely understand why Shiv is worried and why she tripped up herself.
Mm-hmm.
Which metaphorically she always does as well. But did you like that final line?
Oh yeah, I mean, you don't even know if Kendall is like really listening to Hugo as he comes in and Hugo's on the phone yelling about Juliet taking a strap on. But when he hits him with the "unless you want me to pull out the strap on," that
Mm-hmm.
just feels so Logan esque. Like that feels like the thing that Logan would do if he were there and he had that information or he had that leverage to
Yeah.
pull. And it's dastardly and kind of evil, but it's kind of also exciting to see Kendall in a way ascend to the legacy that he's supposed to
I
have taken
don't
on. Like
know.
this is like it's I don't know. It's not what like I want in the world, but in the world of the show, it's kind of like the he's finally broken free from his father's shadow.
Bro, wasn't it just last season? The pool episode? Just last
Yeah,
season.
I mean,
I
in
think
the
there's a.
timeline of the show, it might have been like 4 months ago.
Sheesh. Yeah, that's a lot, bro. Like we haven't even seen his family with it. Now he's taking care of a company before he even take care of his own. There's one part about it where, like you're saying, it's gonna be really interesting having this figure who's always said these crazy things now actually come in with a position of power. Where
Hmm.
Logan would always just say a very clean old school F off. This man always has to paint a picture. I had to pull out the strap on. Like, that's such a Kendall spin to his father. Just say
Yeah.
it. Just say F off like your daddy did. And that's where I'm like, bro, you're going to take the scenic route and every single thing. You're going to ruin so many deals. I'm excited. We come in for the mess.
Yeah.
I'm excited. He is not a serious person. He is the most unserious of them all, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, what a way to end it.
Yeah, great way to end it. So, whose stock are you buying at the end of this episode? Are you are you on Kendall's ship? Are you going with Roman? Do you feel like Shiv is gonna pull some move and find her way to the top next, or do you think they're all kind of on a downward trajectory from here?
Marsha. She's the only one who
Mar-
came.
I mean, look, she's 60 to 70
Marsha came
million
out with
dollars richer
63
at
mil.
least.
Who leaves $63 million richer? That's what I'm looking at. Go ahead, run whatever company. She just made 63 mil.
Hmm. That
Perfect.
is a nice
She's my
apartment,
top.
though.
Yeah, and Willow would be at the bottom for me easily. I feel so bad for her. Her honeymoon is just the swing states that the man needs. That's terrible. So yeah,
The,
Marsh at the top.
the honeymoon states.
Carrie's a wild card right now, so we'll see. If not, I would have put her last because I was embarrassing dropping the first. But yeah,
You don't think we've seen the last of Carrie, or are you just kind of not sure at this point?
I mean, she showed up here. I didn't think they were gonna let her in the house.
I feel like the coldest thing for the show to do would be to not show us Carrie anymore. Like I think that feels
Why not?
on theme for Succession. So I kind of would,
Raw.
as mean as it is, I do think this it would be great if this was the last of Carrie.
I saw people bringing up that one in the first episode when it all ends, when Kendall's really trying to take power, and there's that one dude from episode one who tells him that he's gonna take everything down. I don't know if you remember that. It's like the final line of the episode, and they're like,
Yeah,
"That guy never came back into play." What if he
Walter
does?
guy,
What if he
right?
comes in the last episode and actually screws them all over?
Hey, Mark Mylod put him in the menu, so he's still got a relationship with that actor. He's
That's
probably
right. He
around.
was the tech bro.
Yeah,
Ooh.
maybe that's the October
Ooh.
surprise waiting for the Roy family.
I like that.
Uh, Ronette asked in the live stream, were Marcia and Logan still married? I feel like while they were separated, they never actually got divorced. So yeah, Marcia is able to just kind of swoop in as the current wife of Logan as at his
Hmm.
death, and
Well,
yeah,
they weren't
playing
gonna
into her
divorce.
benefit.
Yeah, I don't know what the behind the scenes there were, but yeah, as far as we know, they were still married.
Yeah. Any other things that we haven't hit on, or things you want to explore a little bit more deeply? Any thoughts
Uh,
on what's coming next?
uh, One, the spit handshake for the real estate thing was raw. That's one of my favorite little moments visually. The other one would be the fact that your boy was in this as a cameo, giving a big speech for everybody because
Yeah, it
Barry's
was
about to
Stephen
end.
Root night on HBO.
Man's in the fourth season of two HBO shows that are both ending, so I hope he gets on Dragons or on something else on Winning Time because he is done after that. But hey, shout out to him. It was a Stephen Root night uh, for him on Sunday, but it was cool to see him. The Sandy smirk we didn't get to talk about. They brought in old Grandpa Sandy, and he had this smirk on there. Like that's an interesting default face to have on. He was Chuckles the
Hmm.
clown on this episode. But then the last one that I would have is well, two more. Greg, F Greg, bro. I hate Greg. I hate Greg every single
He's
episode
angling
more.
so hard. It's like
I
so
hate him so
naked in
much.
this episode too. He's
Nah,
becoming like more brazen, I think, in his selfishness.
he's
And I
entertaining
just also
but obnoxious.
another moment that we haven't talked about is that moment during Stephen Root's little speech when Greg and Tom start whispering to each other, and Tom also lets slip that Logan died trying to get his phone out of the clogged toilet.
Yeah,
What a
because all
what
he
an
ate was
undignified ending.
steak and frites. Yeah, but the
But yeah,
one that
like
made Greg look really bad was when what's
Greg
your name
tries to
drops
like
the purse
whisper in his. Oh yeah.
and
Oh
he
yeah.
looks at it like, should I help? But he doesn't. I hate those people. I hate those. He's just staring at it like he's supposed to
And the
do
here
something,
comes the
but he doesn't want
waterworks
to.
line.
Yeah. No, he's such a despicable person, bro.
Uh,
I don't
yeah,
like him. But I guess that's what makes him
he's
so
gross.
entertaining. He's
Yeah, well,
gross.
I
Yes.
feel I saw somebody say it, but I feel like the most fitting end for him would be to be back at the theme park in the mascot suit. Like that's really where he
Whoever said that, shout out. Give him a raise.
belongs.
But my final one, the Stewie moment was beautiful. I really liked it a lot. I know that they were kind of a little iffy with having him in the final meeting, but when Stewie came in, cracked the joke to his buddy, causing him to cry, that whole hug moment, yeah, I thought that was really nice.
Yeah, I mean, Stewie has always been kind of like a hard negotiator with Kendall, but he does show up for him and does kind of feel like the closest thing Kendall's got to an ally out there through thick and thin. So helped come through for him at least this once, and maybe it's all for his own selfishness because it's gonna make him a lot of money if this deal goes through in the end. But hey,
True.
he isn't a completely worthless friend at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's mostly it. Talking about the future of the show. They sort of teased that Jared Menken was going to arrive and pay his respects, although we didn't actually get a scene with Justin Kirk
Yeah.
in this episode. I feel like as we move forward and kind of go through the Gojo deal, we're going to get increasingly onto the election and whether or not we're crossing paths with the potential presidential nominees. I'm curious to see how they decide to portray this and how, like, in the middle of it, things are going to go because, like, the way that things are breaking now that Logan's out of the way, Matson is supposed to acquire Waystar but not acquire ATN, which, as we were talking about, is kind of Succession's world's Fox News, the right wing kind of news out. And then the kids are in the process of buying Pierce, which is supposed to be more of the, like, the left wing news outlet. So
Hmm.
are they going to be in control of both sides of the argument with like 3 days to go before the election or something like that?
That would be the most profound thing that they said. You know, it's like the Oakleys and the Ray-Bans. It doesn't matter which one you're going for; they're owned by the same company.
Yeah. Will be really interesting. We'll be back and breaking it all down on our weekly Succession recaps. But I think that's all for this week's installment. You can catch more from me, Zach Shevich, by following me on Twitter, Instagram, or Letterboxd at ZShevich. That's ZSHEV is in Walter ICH. And check out my YouTube or TikTok channels at Multiplex Show. Art, where can people find more from you?
You can find me over at LME Explain on Twitter, YouTube, Letterboxd, or every week here on the Intercut Podcast.
You can listen to every episode of the Intercut Podcast on iTunes, Anchor, Spotify, Podcast Addict, whatever your favorite podcatcher is. I like Overcast. And then make sure you subscribe not just to the audio version, but to the video version of the podcast as well on youtube.com/IntercutPod. You can watch our bright smiling faces as we break down the latest in entertainment. Catch our Intercut weekend must-watches streaming on the YouTube channel every Monday. And please leave us a comment, like the videos. Consider heading over to iTunes to give us that much requested 5-star review. And like our Facebook, follow our Instagram, follow our Twitter. You can even support us over on Patreon and find all of those pages at Intricate Pod to get updates throughout the week from Art, from me, from all the guests that we feature here on Intercut. And check the link in the description to join our Discord as well. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, I think you're a corporate legend. What you did in the 90s with cable, huge.